What are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about why your tap water absolutely must be filtered, more so now than ever in history. And I'll explain why. It's very recent findings on that. We'll talk about the toxins and the drugs that you're taking through your tap water if you're not filtering it without having a clue you're doing that. Why only you can actually solve this problem. And we'll look at the next generation of water for health as well. My journey, how did it actually start? Well, as I say, I had to find my way out of depression. And I've been trying to do that since 2015. That's when I started supplementing and eating healthier and really trying to find the best ways to get healthy. I didn't really think about water right at the start. It was a little while before I did that. But I have now presented a water webinar, this very water webinar, only updated all the time, for 4 years. But I have to tell you, those 4 years could not have prepared me for what I've been looking at recently. The stuff that's come out in 2023 is pretty mind-blowing, and you're going to be really surprised tonight. I have spent hundreds of hours digging into this. I really have. And in some ways, you get to cheat and go the easy way. And, you know, that's a good thing for you tonight. Now, the first thing I have to emphasize to you is your tap water is bad. Okay, it's really, really, really bad. And I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to explain how we come to that conclusion. To start off with, I'm going to run a little video. And this video is by this lady called Cheryl Atkinson. Now, Cheryl was a journalist for CBS, and she resigned because she said that CBS would continually cave into corporate interests and wouldn't let her actually present the programs that she wanted to present. They would cave into political bias. So the water companies would stop her producing a documentary on water. The big tech companies would stop her producing something on EMFs, for example. So she left, and she actually went out on her own, started a production company called Full Measure. And this is like a 3.5-minute clip of an episode she did about our water quality. So let me click myself off screen and run this for you right now.
Scientists have discovered a hard reality when it comes to our everyday drinking water. It's now loaded with a frightening array of contaminants, from pesticides to prescription medicine, that are not filtered out and can pose all kinds of health risks. We spoke to Seth Siegel, author of Troubled Water, about how this could have happened and the dangers it poses. When we're talking about what's in the water, what are some of the things that's in our water that might surprise people?
Well, we know for sure and widely there are chemicals like PFOA, the active ingredient in Teflon. We know for sure there's something called PFOS, which is an active ingredient in the Scotch Guard that you spray on your textiles.
Cancer-causing chemicals?
Yes, definitely cancer-causing and endocrine disrupting, which means the fancy term for the fact that it affects your hormonal system. So pesticides and herbicides, they're created to interfere with the reproductive life of a weed or of an insect. Well, that then gets washed into the water supply. We humans start to drink it, and even though it's very small doses of it, it's affecting us as well.
What are some of the pharmaceuticals, the medication that we find in our water, and isn't that cleaned out when there's normal purification process that goes on in municipalities?
You would hope so. You would think so. I assumed so when I started doing the research for my book. We have examples of where, mostly through fish research, we discover that products that we humans use on a daily basis are now in the fish. 50% of the fish they studied in the Great Lakes had psychiatric drugs in their brains and in their organs. So Prozac, Alexa, and drugs like that, and generics. The only way it comes into the water supply is humans take those pills, they pee it out after they've taken it a few hours later. It gets flushed through the wastewater treatment system into a waterway, all perfectly legal, exactly compliant with the law, and then it gets uptaken in fish, it gets uptaken in our drinking water, it gets uptaken in the water we use for our irrigation.
Was there a study that showed that hormones in the water is leading to what we would call transgender fish?
Well, I don't want to call it transgender fish, but I will call it intersexual fish. One recent study had studied 19 rivers, and they found that there was a very high level of male fish that were now growing eggs from the estrogen. The only reason for that would be from the estrogen that is getting into the water. Now, some of that comes from birth control pills, some of that comes from animal feed, some of that comes from other natural sources. Now, whether it has an effect on human gender selection, that's a bridge too far, but there are people, not me, but there are people who have a suspicion that that may be the cause.
We have federal agencies that we have paid billions of dollars to for this very purpose. I mean, there are a few things more important probably than protecting the safety of our water supply. So how has this been allowed to happen?
Frankly, Cheryl, this is precisely why I wrote this book. It is not to write a book. It is to hopefully to launch a movement where people will say, I demand better oversight and I demand better drinking water for myself and for my children.
Siegel says there is something the federal EPA should be doing, mandating use of technology to filter out these contaminants. He says it exists and isn't terribly expensive. It's just that hardly anyone is using it.
Interesting, right? That's Cheryl Atkinson, a clip from Full Measure about our water quality in the US. Now, she mentioned drugs in our water there. And this has been a mind-blowing thing to me over the last couple of years, just how many drugs are in our water. So I want to run this little clip for you. This is from CBC in Canada, the Canadian Broadcasting Company. This is less than 2 minutes long. But again, mind-blowing about drugs that are in our water supply. Let me run this for you now.
Painkillers, blood thinners, and chemotherapy drugs are just some of the substances that are found in your drinking water. There's new information that some drugs are ending up in our water at levels never seen before. CBC's Kelly Crow has more on that.
There's something happening to the rainbow darter, a tiny fish that lives in the rivers of southern Ontario. If they're downstream from a sewage treatment plant, the male fish turn into females.
If you expose them to wastewater, they will feminize. They will have eggs in the testes.
What's causing the males to develop eggs? Human hormones, residue from prescription drugs that are flushed into the river. Using new highly sensitive equipment, scientists are finding an increasing variety of prescription drugs in the waterways. Painkillers, blood thinners, chemotherapy agents, hormones, antibiotics. If we swallow it, scientists can find it in the water.
Some of the drug comes in us and through us and out of us totally unchanged. So we actually have active drugs going into the waterway through our urine or feces.
In Canada, there are no national standards for pharmaceuticals in drinking water, but environment officials are working on a water quality guideline for carbamazepine, an anti-epileptic drug that shows up almost everywhere. Kelly Crow, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, obviously, one of the most interesting things about that is where the lady at the end says there are no standards, basically. There are no dictated standards of how our water must be in Canada. And that is pretty mind-blowing. Our water is full of all this stuff, radionuclides, arsenic, VOCs, other people's drugs, disinfectants, etc., etc. And one other thing that is huge, and I'm going to tell you about it in a moment or two, but it's right up to date, 2023, it'll blow your mind. But if you remember, do you remember Erin Brockovich? Do you remember that film that came out way back? I think it came out in the year 2000, and it was about an incident that happened in 1993. And what that was actually about was her exposing this huge company that were dumping chemicals into the water supply. Okay. Now, Erin has written a book very recently called Superman's Not Coming. And the subtitle of it was Our National Water Crisis and What We the People Can Do About It. The Superman's Not Coming was basically, you have to look after this yourself. This is your issue. And every webinar I do, whether it's water, whether it's EMF, whether it's sauna, I always say to you, you are the only one can take action on this. It's up to you. You have to protect your own health. No one else is going to do it for you. If you think about your water supply, maybe you're in a reasonably new house and you've reasonably new pipes, etc. But think about how that water gets to your house. Think about the quality of the water pipes that have been there maybe for decades. The same pipes with lead in them, with whatever, that's delivering the water to your home. Our tap water should not be for drinking, folks. As I say, Erin Brockovich back in 1993 was exposing that huge company that destroyed the water supply in that movie. There was another thing happened in 1993 in Milwaukee. I don't know if any of you remember it. It was the cryptosporidium outbreak in the water supply in Milwaukee. Over 60 people died, hundreds and thousands of people affected with severe diarrhea because of this cryptosporidium that got into the water. Flint, Michigan, very recent. I don't need to tell you, Flint, Michigan made every news program and every station in the planet. over 2,000 days without clean water. The quality of the water was unbelievable. More recently, the Ohio train derailment completely destroyed some of the water supplies there. The Minnesota nuclear power plant that ended up with 400,000 gallons of radioactive water. All I'm saying is it's right through history. Our water supply is a complete disaster. But there is a massive new water problem. Now, this hit really at the start of June 2023. Okay, this massive new water problem in the USA water supply. On the 2nd of June, there was a lot of different states were suing 3M and DuPont, the big chemical manufacturers, because of something in the water called forever chemicals. That was the 2nd of June. Now, it was due to go to court, but surprise, surprise, just as it was due to go to court, the next day, on the 3rd of June, 3 of the main companies agreed to pay more than $1 billion to settle a lot of these claims. $1 billion. Now, companies do not agree to pay $1 billion to settle anything easily. But if you have never heard of PFAs, I'm going to blow your mind right now. So this is a 2-minute clip from CNN explaining PFAs and what they are. Let me run this for you before we get into the whole thing. CNN talking about PFAs.
You may have never heard of PFAS, but you're likely to have these potentially dangerous chemicals inside your body. Perfluoroalkyl and polyperfluoroalkyl are substances that are known as forever chemicals. These synthetic chemicals were developed in the 1940s and are used to repel oil and water. They make consumer items non-stick, waterproof, stain-resistant, and they're found in many products you likely use. Some obvious: non-stick cookware, waterproof clothing, but also in things you may not necessarily realize: dental floss, pizza boxes, microwave popcorn bags, even makeup and sunscreen. Now, over the last several decades, these chemicals have been developed at this breakneck pace. There's now more than 9,000 PFAS-related chemicals to date, and again, they're called forever chemicals because they don't break down completely, meaning the same properties that make these chemicals so durable also make them extremely hard to get rid of, meaning they accumulate in the environment, in animals, and yes, they accumulate in us, humans. Thousands of communities across the United States have drinking water that is contaminated with PFAS, and as a result, more than 200 million Americans could have toxic PFAS in their drinking water, according to the Environmental Working Group. Now here's the thing. Nearly all people have a measurable level of PFAS in their bodies. In fact, it's estimated that 98% of the U.S. population has some level of PFAS contamination, and for individuals exposed on a regular basis, the chemicals build up cumulatively. Now, I want to be clear. These are relatively early days, and we still don't fully understand the extent of the threat posed by these chemicals. PFAS have been linked to cancer and kidney and liver damage and other serious health problems in people with prolonged exposure. As for reversing the damage that has already been done, water treatment is expensive at scale. It's even harder, if not impossible, to remove PFAS from soil or the environment. But here's what you can do until a cheaper, more effective solution is found. You can avoid stain and water-resistant products and sprays. If you order delivery or takeout from restaurants, remove your food from takeout containers before reheating. When cooking at home, steer clear of non-stick cookware and filter your drinking water with activated carbon or reverse osmosis if possible.
Fascinating video, right? Now, these things are called poly or parafluoroalcohols, PFAs, and there are thousands of these chemicals out there. Only 4 of them are currently regulated. 4 out of thousands are currently regulated. Now, I've put together a special page all about PFAs because the webinar tonight obviously is not all about PFAs, but this is a fascinating subject, and I know you'll want to look into it some more. So we'll send you a link to that page. But PFAs, I tell you, it's scary stuff, and you're going to be really interested in it. So we have put together that special page on it. But you know what happened 3 weeks after that $1 billion settlement from those 3 companies? The biggest polluter, 3M, they agreed to fork out $10 billion, $10 billion with a B, dollars. Can you imagine the level of responsibility a company must feel they bear, or the damage you must know you've caused to agree to that, to $10 billion in damages? Now, this only covers the water companies. as I'll show you in a moment or two, there's other lawsuits against them. This just covers the lawsuits from the water companies, but they put up $10 billion. Now, amazingly, the government are also allowing them to keep polluting the waterways until 2025. So you have another 2 years to pollute all you want, and your $10 billion payment will cover that. Amazing. But what I've done is I've put together a 6-minute video from different places, including this guy, John Oliver's show, showing where PFAS came from, the harm they cause, and what can be done about them. Now, if you go to YouTube, you'll find hundreds of videos on this. Fascinating subject, as I say. But I've tried to bring all those videos down to 6 minutes, clip them up, put them together, and this is it, 6 minutes from John Oliver, etc. You'll find this fascinating. Let me run this for you now.
First time, the federal government is on the cusp of regulating a class of deadly so-called forever chemicals out of America's drinking water. The EPA's proposal applies to 6 of those chemicals, known as PFAS compounds, and would require water utilities to clean any detectable level out of their systems. Doing so could cost billions, and thousands of their chemical cousins would remain unregulated.
Invented in the 1940s, PFAS became popular in an era when chemicals were widely celebrated as modern marvels. To say PFAS chemicals are ubiquitous today seems an understatement. Besides AFFF, they are in Teflon, Scotchgard, plates, parkas, ski wax, boots, and shoes. The list goes on and on.
We've seen, somewhere between 98 and 99% of individuals have detectable levels of these chemicals in their blood.
A big part of the problem is the same stout chemical bonds that make PFAS so impervious also make them practically indestructible. They stubbornly persist in the environment and in our bodies, so much so they are called forever chemicals.
DuPont has always been proud of its research,
working to uncover knowledge that will contribute to better living tomorrow.
Research the chemical industry often kept secret, including on PFAS, otherwise known as forever chemicals because they resist breaking down, widely used for decades in products ranging from cookware and clothing to food packaging.
They knew the harm of their chemical, and they didn't tell anybody.
In a newly published paper, The Devil They Knew, researchers poured through previously released documents from DuPont and 3M, putting together timelines as to who knew what and when. The authors found that as early as 1970, companies knew PFAS could be highly toxic when inhaled and moderately toxic when ingested, 40 years before the public health community. The analysis found the chemical industry took a page from Big Tobacco's playbook. There was no evidence companies were funding favorable research. They were suppressing unfavorable research and distorting public conversations about their products.
We don't know the health effects. We're playing out an experiment in real time.
Specifically, we're going to be talking about a particular class of chemicals tonight called PFAS, which stand for per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances. They go by a wide variety of chemical names, like all of these, and they are used by recognizable brands like Gore-Tex and Teflon, among many, many others. But the main thing they have in common is that they make surfaces that don't get stuff stuck to. First, these chemicals have been linked to a massive array of health issues. High exposures to these 2 major PFAS alone have been linked to high cholesterol, ulcerative colitis, pregnancy-induced hypertension, thyroid disease, testicular and kidney cancer, and... So tonight, we thought we'd take a look at just how bad these substances are, how long some of their major manufacturers knew about it, and how hard this will all be to fix. And let's start by looking at one of the most ubiquitous PFAS, PFOA, also known as C8 because of its 8 carbon molecules. 3M started selling C8 back in 1951 to the chemical giant DuPont, which then used it to make Teflon, which it marketed through ads like this.
I used to be a slave to scraping and scrubbing pots and pans, but I've been liberated by Teflon. Food doesn't stick to Teflon like it does to other things. See?
But the thing is, by the time that ad aired, 3M and DuPont already knew that these chemicals accumulated in humans and animals, that they didn't degrade in the environment, and that they could increase the size of the liver in rats, rabbits, and dogs. So the warning signs were very much there, and in the decades that followed, they learned even more. In 1981, 3M found ingestion of PFAS caused birth defects in rats. And when they told DuPont about this, and DuPont then tested the children of employees in their Teflon division, they found that of 7 births, 2 had eye defects, information that, interestingly, DuPont did not make public. And by 1991, it had gotten unambiguous warnings that it then spectacularly ignored.
3M told DuPont that under no circumstances should you put it in waterways. It's right there in the document. Don't put this in the waterways. But at the end of the day, they start dumping so much C8 into the water that they at one point lose track of how much they've actually put out there.
Many companies are continuing to do the bare minimum here, or even trying to evade responsibility. DuPont, for instance, settled a class action lawsuit with residents of the town where it was dumping C8, and shortly afterward agreed to eventually phase out using the chemical, which sounds good. But there are some significant asterisks on that. Because while they did stop using C8, they simply switched to a different kind of PFAS, something called Gen X, spinning the manufacture of it off into a separate company, Chemours. Now, did they do that so that any legal liability wouldn't stick to them and instead slide right off them like bugs on a Teflon tree? Who can say? Apparently not me legally. What I can say is that while Chemours claims Gen X is safer, scientists still have significant concerns about its presence in our water supply.
This is, in my view, more of a risk than we should be forced to take. This compound's a member of a class of compounds that are all thought to be able to make people sick, with cancers of various kinds, other kinds of dysfunction. We don't know the full extent of it.
And while we have just focused on a handful of individual PFAS tonight, there are hundreds, if not thousands of them. So the problem is, if and when Gen X is eventually found to be harmful, companies can presumably just move on to another one, then on to another one, and so on and so on. And it is not like it is easy to know which products you're buying do and don't contain PFAS. It's not like they have to carry labels stating this product contains devil's piss, although that's actually a very good idea, and they should absolutely have to do that. But the bigger issue is, no matter how responsible consumers choose to be, if the factory that makes the chemical does not dispose of its waste properly, it's likely getting into your bloodstream anyway, which is pretty frustrating, as the activist you saw earlier points out.
No one said, hey, you know, I'm good with a little Teflon chemical in my baby's blood. No one said that. They said, I love these pans.
Exactly. No one loves pans so much that they'd be willing to put poison in their baby's blood. Consider solutions like drinking bottled water or using a reverse osmosis filter.
Excuse a little bit of language in there, but that's John Oliver. I cut most of it out, believe me. He mentioned in there about birth defects in one of the companies, that they did a study on pregnant staff, people who simply worked there. And he said about eye deformities. This poor gentleman, Bucky Bailey, he was one of those children. His mother worked there, his mother was pregnant, and it did that to him. Now, obviously, it says there he's a safer chemicals advocate now. You can understand why. He's devoting his life to making sure this sort of thing never happens again. But if you noticed another thing in that video, they said that the government are going to regulate 6 of those chemicals. They're regulating 6 out of how many thousand? And then Oliver explains that, well, they'll just change the name, or they'll change one tiny bit of the chemical formula and move on, give it a new name, give it a new company, and the crap goes on, basically. It's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. It's going to be front page news for years, folks. This came out, it hit the news really in June 2023, but it's going to be front page news because there's so many lawsuits. There's not only lawsuits from people who have suffered because of the Teflon thing and the clothes, but the US government are actually suing because earplugs provided by 3M caused so much injury to our American heroes. The earplugs had PFAs in them. So there's firefighters are suing, the airports are suing because this stuff was used to spray planes. These companies are in huge trouble, and the $10 billion will not touch the liability they have. But as I say, I can't talk about PFAS all day. All I'm saying to you is PFAS are a massive, massive issue, and they are in 99% of us. They are being found in 99% of us, and they never go away. So one last thing on PFAS, and then I'll leave it. This was a film made about PFAS about 5 years ago, I think now, called Dark Waters. A really, really good movie. Fantastic story. Tells the truth about what actually happened, and the lawyer that spent 20 years pursuing these chemical companies, it'll blow your mind. You'll really enjoy that. And I've put a separate little section on that on the page about PFAs that we're going to email to you. So look out for that as well. But let me go through my own journey really, really quickly with water. I started off when I knew there was a problem. I started drinking from plastic bottles. Now, I never thought about the problems with hormone disruption and infertility from the BPA and all that stuff that was in the plastics. I never really gave that very much serious thought at all about the toxins. I moved on to glass bottled water at one point, but it's totally impractical because you know how many glass bottles do you need to provide your drinking water? Just completely impractical. I then went to a cheap filter pitcher, as some of you probably have done. It's a Brita type filter. You get it in Tesco's in the UK or Walmart or Target in the US. And it improves the taste and the color, or sorry, the odor a little bit. But it's really just a simple carbon filter, and it's not effective with the major pollutants, the fluoride, the chromium, the arsenic, etc. But it is better than nothing. So if you can't do anything else, at least do that. I then moved on to an expensive alkaline machine. I was becoming known at this point in the health world, and people knew I had an audience. So this guy loaned me a machine because he wanted me to sell them. And I tried it out. I asked him the cost of it. It was $6,000 alkaline machine. Now, I wasn't impressed with it at all. It didn't actually do anything for me. The filtration was terrible. I didn't like the alkalinity. And you had to clean it like every week if it was going to maintain the way it was working. But the main thing that blew my mind was the expense of it, the $6,000. Now, I found out that that's because the $3,000 of it goes to commission to the salespeople. Unbelievable. Of that $6,000, half of it goes to pay the salespeople. But the pricing was crazy. And really, it's not a realistic option for most people at that price. And it was an alkaline-based machine. Now, alkaline-based machines have been, as we will come to, sort of blown to the side because they've been shown that they're not that effective. Now, next from me, I found the Berkey filter. And I loved my Berkey filter. The Berkey, as you can see, it's just a two-part filter. You put water in the top, it filters through to the bottom, and you let it out the little faucet. That's how Berkey works. Actually, I came to realize later that the great filtration that I thought was maybe not so great. The New York Times ran a whole article about Berkey and how the filtration wasn't as good as everyone thought, including myself. But at that point, I thought that was it. I was happy with my Berkey. I had no intention of pursuing water further. I thought we're good until I started filming again. And we'd taken a break for a year from filming. And then we started back to do the next documentary, Faith, Hope, and Cancer. Now, that took us to Tijuana. And in Tijuana, I came across a hydrogen water machine. I never had seen one before. They were using it in the cancer clinics down there. And as we started filming that series and the next series, Live Longer, where we filmed literally, I think 70 experts for that. We filmed hundreds over the years for the different movies. I sort of had a light bulb moment because what I kept hearing about everywhere we went was this hydrogen water. And it was sort of as if there was an insiders club. These doctors and experts knew about this hydrogen water that I knew absolutely nothing about. People like Dr. David Jockers, like Dr. Josh Axe. Josh had a machine in his office and a machine at home for himself and his wife, Chelsea. Dr. Tony Jimenez, who, as I say, he was the doctor down in Tijuana who ran the cancer clinic. He also runs one in Cancun. He insisted that all the water that his cancer patients drank was hydrogen water. Dr. Rashid Bittar sadly left us earlier this year. Some sort of poisoning in his body that took his life. Wonderful gentleman, but a big, big advocate of hydrogen water. Ryan and Teddy Sternigal, again, water machine in their home as they were interviewed. Erin Elizabeth, Dr. Darrell Joffrey. When I interviewed Darrell up in New York in his chiropractic office there, he had a hydrogen water machine sitting in the corner. Now, he's a huge advocate of it. His father, he tells a story about how it helped his father in his last days to live a much more productive and much more comfortable life. And I'll run a little clip of that interview at the very end tonight. But the one guy who we talked to, who talked about hydrogen water on camera straight away, was this gentleman, Robert Scott Bell. Robert, huge believer in hydrogen water, had a machine there as well. Let me run this little clip for you from Live Longer, Feel Better of Robert Scott Bell talking about hydrogen and hydrogen water. Let me run this now.
Hydrogen is the first element on the periodic table of elements. It's the lightest, smallest, and it can go everywhere and anywhere. But what is it functionally in the body? Of course, H2O, 2 hydrogen, and oxygen make up the water. Through an electrolytic process, you can actually reduce the water and reveal the hydrogen to the body in a bioavailable, if you will, form. And what it does is quite fantastic, because it is considered the ultimate antioxidant in that it can take apart, if you will, or let's say put back together that which is very damaging to the cell, these things known as hydroxyl radicals, the OH. And by having the hydrogen available to that in the cell, they can combine and convert from a dangerous substance to a harmless water that is floated out of the body. So it's a beautiful starting point to engage what we know of normal metabolic processes of excretion, of dealing with metabolic waste, things that would be inflammatory if left in the cells unchecked. And hydrogen via water can be released and made accessible to the cells deep in the body, anywhere in the body, and in that way reduce a lot of the oxidative stress or damage or inflammatory cascades that many people are stuck in. So hydration is critical for all of us, yet we don't realize how much we rely upon hydrogen as an element, because most people are not on a clean, organic, raw food type diet. Very little bit of their diet is made up of that. The fiber that is found in raw vegetation, for instance, in a healthy gut microbiome would feed the bacteria in such a way that that bacteria interacting with that whole unprocessed raw organic food would produce copious amounts of hydrogen made available to the rest of the body and cells. So we have to heal the body and get people back to a state where they can actually do that from their food. We can't wait for that. We all need to drink water. So if we can release the hydrogen from the water, we can facilitate powerful, optimal metabolic function restoration, and then continue to work to heal the gut so that it can do what it's designed to do in interacting with real food. But the water is a key way to get there right away, immediately. The technology to produce hydrogen water has been around for many decades. In Asia, they have these machines that are utilized, and they're considered medicinal, if you will. The machines are medical devices. But much of the hype surrounding this type of water has been focused on alkalinity, the ability to change the pH, to split the stream so you have an alkaline stream and an acid stream. But the reality is the benefit was not due to its pH, but due to the hydrogen that would be released in typically the alkaline stream. Now we can produce that water in a pH neutral form, so we don't have to split and waste the water that you can't use. So in this way, the hydrogen has been known, and there are hundreds of scientific articles, peer-reviewed articles on animal and human models in terms of disease processes in the body that can be corrected by introduction of hydrogen in a bioavailable form.
So that's Robert Scott Bell and his interview where he talked about hydrogen water, the first time really that someone on camera had talked about it. Now, as it turns out, this water is the water that we should all be drinking if we want to live in a state of optimal health. Be happy with how we look in the mirror, have tons of youthful energy. Anyone can use this natural water-based method of healing, as Robert Scott Bell was explaining there. Now, he mentions free radicals in that video, and he also mentions how a healthy gut should be producing 7 to 10 liters of hydrogen every single day, but we're not, because of basically our guts are messed up so much by what we eat. But the free radical thing is crucial that you understand. Modern causes of free radicals, which give us problems, are things like our diet, like the EMFs around us, like the drugs that go into us. They all create free radicals. They're externally generated sources, if you like. And free radicals attack healthy atoms. That's why they cause problems in our body. But antioxidants, if they come alongside the free radical, they can stop that happening. An antioxidant stops them by coming alongside and donating an electron to make the free radical stable. So you'll have heard of CoQ10, vitamin C, blueberries, and so on. All great antioxidants. However, antioxidants like those can only actually do so much. They pale in comparison to nature's most powerful antioxidant, which is hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most powerful antioxidant that there is. Now, oxidation is normal. It's an inescapable reaction of life. It's part of aging. And we need some oxidation. But what we don't need is oxidation at a crazy fast speed. Oxidation is simply an overabundance of these free radicals, and that's called oxidative stress. So it's really crucial that you understand free radicals lead to oxidative stress, and oxidative stress leads to chronic inflammation. The truth, according to scientists from right across the USA and validated by many highly reputable institutes, is that the root cause of almost all disease is inflammation in your body. Now, I'm going to run for you later another follow-up interview that I did. In fact, let me run it for you now. A follow-up interview that I did with Robert Scott Bell. It's only 5 minutes long, but he explains in great detail why this hydrogen is so crucial to your body and so crucial to your health. Let me run this for you now.
We again look at this structure of water, 2 hydrogens and an oxygen. Now, and we ask the question, hey, what is it about these 2 elements that are so very vitally important? And can water be a carrier, in addition to its substance as H2O, of the actual hydrogen or of the actual oxygen? You know, of course, fish swim in water and they're able to remove the oxygen from that water to breathe, to survive. We don't have gills, we have lungs, and we take it from the air primarily. But our gastrointestinal system is fascinating, because when we consume, let's say, more raw vegetation, you know, having a salad with greens and, you know, the superfoods people know about, it's like, wow, you need more greens. Well, why? Not only the minerals it may carry in its, you know, its own right, but they talk about the roughage, the fiber, all of these things, as through the digestive process in the gut, will interact with the microbiome. Has anybody heard about this, the microbiome? How important is the gut bacteria to assimilation of nutrients, much less detoxification or the production of neurotransmitters, the production of endocrine compounds? I mean, we're learning, wow, we've got to be humbled before our Creator, because our Creator set the stage to say, you know what, you don't live without the bugs. You don't live without the bacteria. Without them, you're dead. You're done. This physical body doesn't work. So what's happening in there? As you bring this roughage, these non-soluble fibrous, substances from the vegetable kingdom in this process of interacting with raw vegetation, they produce hydrogen. And this hydrogen is then floods your system, because it is on the periodic table of elements, the first element. And it can combine with some of the most dangerous and inflammatory free radicals in your system, in your cells. These things are known as the hydroxyl radicals. And without the molecular hydrogen, or the H2 available, there is a limited ability to neutralize those radicals. And so in the normal production of a healthy, you know, hydrogen accessibility to your cells, to your body, you, by eating a cleaner, organic, vegetarian diet, and again, I'm not saying everybody has to be a vegetarian, but I'm just giving you a perspective of where this is coming from. You produce this hydrogen through your diet, through the interaction with the microbiome, and then your cells are benefited, because the H2 combines with the OH molecules, which are the hydroxyl radicals, and converts them from a dangerous substance that causes inflammation, damage, aging, all of these things, and converts them to water. Wow, we take something harmful and make it harmless. You say we, but I mean, it's this whole system as it was designed by God to do. And then we, again, safely float these things that could be very damaging in the long term and take them out as water. It's a beautiful system. But who knew that it was the hydrogen produced by the microbiome after eating the vegetation? Now, we've got a harsh reality here. Michael, we know that the vast majority of people living in the Western world do not eat adequate quantities of raw, organic vegetation. You know, it's the fast food burgers and fries. And listen, I can enjoy a hamburger whole, hopefully organic, free, you know, as much as anybody. But if that's our subsistence, and that's how I grew up, this is my Western diet upbringing, it could be trouble. Again, from chronic constipation to hospitalization, to musculoskeletal inflammatory conditions, to, you know, you name it, headaches. There's so many things that we go into come from hydration, lack thereof, and or the lack of production of this H2, the molecular hydrogen. So along comes this technology out of Asia, decades ago now, that uses electrolysis to split the water and facilitate the release and dissolving of molecular hydrogen into the water itself, that we can now drink through this technology to, I'm not going to say, it's not necessarily a bypass, because we'd ultimately like to restore the microbiome, but in the interim, what's the fastest way we can get hydrogen produced or accessible and viable for the body? We can drink it. And this also facilitates a restoration of the terrain or the home for the microbiome as well. So we have the side benefit of we're healing the gut, which is a big part of I lecture around the world on healing the gut, but facilitating the re-emergence of the healthy microbiome so that it does its job in what? Partly, among many things that it does, is produce the H2 for the body so that we can neutralize these harmful free radicals. And I've seen it supercharge the use of other minerals because there's metabolic need for this H2. So that when I do, lecture on the things like we've talked about before, the selenium particularly, and how important that is for every cellular function, and particularly detoxification of the cells, every cell in the body and the liver, of course, that the hydrogen seems to supercharge the body's ability to use these minerals even. So it's not it's only that, but it's how does it work into the bigger picture? How does it facilitate so many metabolic actions and reactions that are necessary for vital functioning, much less restoration of health and integrity? And my mom, and maybe I mentioned her, she's 84 years of age, and she does no drugs, no pharmaceutical drugs at 84. She goes out dancing 2-3 times a week. I'm not exaggerating. And she has the technology we talk about to produce hydrogen in the water. She was already doing pretty well a few years back when we got her the water installation. It took her to another level. She says it publicly. She says, yeah, I was doing okay, but I started drinking the hydrogen water. And, now I've got like bounds and bounds of energy, because hydrogen, think about that, the source of energy of the sun, hydrogen, right? And so it's an energy producer as well. It's a catalyst for energy. So there's another aspect that you bring up, not only hydration, but energy itself. And you can see how much energy we can draw from this hydrogen.
So that was RSB, Robert Scott Bell, explaining the whole oxidation thing, the free radical thing, and explaining it as only he can. Now, have you ever wondered why big diseases are spiking now, all at the same time, with our modern way of life? Because if inflammation is not lowered, it develops into chronic illness. So you have to get inflammation lowered. And that's what's happening everywhere. Inflammation that we have these days is simply developing into illness. The CDC's own website spells it out perfectly. And I was genuinely shocked when I looked this up. 6 in 10 adults in the US have a chronic disease. A chronic disease. 6 in 10. So that's what? 3 in 5 have a chronic disease. 4 in 10 have 2 or more chronic diseases. It's unbelievable. Because, I mean, I don't mean this. I've lived a pretty simple, healthy life. I'm 59 now. I've never had a disease of any kind in my life. Now, yes, I'm lucky, I guess, in some ways. But you got to stack the odds in your favor, folks. And 6 in 10 is absolutely nuts that we're in that position. The state of the USA right now, according to the CDC, diabetes up 700%. 700%. 80% of Americans now overweight. 4 in every 5. Arthritis predicted to rise by 50% more in the next 20 years. Cancer predicted to rise by another 57%. That will put cancer at 1 in 2. 1 in 2 of us are walking around with cancer in another few years' time. Dementia predicted to rise by 300%. I've lost 2 family members to dementia in the last 4 or 5 years. I have another good friend whose grandmother has dementia right now. Terrible situation, drastic. And I'm sure you have experienced it in your families because it's everywhere. So you'll have experienced it somewhere down the line, but predicted to treble again. And depression completely off the charts right now. Completely and utterly off the charts, especially after the lockdowns of COVID, etc., etc. We are in an awful situation. So we can see that disease is rampant everywhere right now. The big pharmaceutical companies have been feeding us lies since before we were born. We're never taught about how disease is caused. All they care about is making us lifetime customers, folks. And alongside that, they do everything in their power to hide the truth about all this stuff from you and I. That's what the pharmaceutical companies do. It doesn't matter if you have cancer, heart disease, diabetes, autoimmune disease, digestive disorders, or Alzheimer's. It all starts with inflammation at the cellular level. And most people are suffering from high levels of inflammation, and they don't even know that they are. These levels are often caused by the, as we've explained, the toxins in your environment, in your food supply, from EMFs, etc., etc. We're surrounded by all these different chemicals, the PFAs that we talked about earlier, that's in our water, that's in our bodies now, that never goes away. And even even stress and lack of sleep contribute to chronic inflammation. Now, this is another doctor who believes that hydrogen heals in ways that are unparalleled and that it can stop disease in its tracks. His name is Dr. Joe McCullough. I have a lot of respect for him. Google have basically banned him. He is considered a pariah in a lot of the normal health fields, but he's a crazily intelligent guy. And he talks about hydrogen in the absolute utmost echelons of things you can get to help you with your health. Let me run, this is only a 3-minute video from Joe McCullough. Let me run this for you.
Hi, this is Dr. McCullough, and today I want to share some really exciting information about one of the best ways to reduce excessive oxidative stress in your body. Why is that important? Because excessive oxidative stress is going to produce too many free radicals, which can be vitally important signaling molecules like nitric oxide. But when you get too many of them from eating a poor diet or being exposed to toxins, they're going to cause some harm. You see, these excess free radicals can damage your precious stem cells, your mitochondria, your cell membranes, proteins, and DNA, and all this can lead to disease and premature death. Now, the Japanese have discovered a novel approach to address this with the most common molecule in the universe, molecular hydrogen gas. Now, they've done most of the research and in 2007 published a landmark study in the most prestigious journal, Nature Medicine, that catalyzed a mountain of science on the clinical use of molecular hydrogen gas to reduce excessive oxidative stress. Now, because molecular hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the universe, it can easily penetrate every tissue in your body, including your brain and important cellular parts like your mitochondria and your nucleus, where it can reduce excessive oxidative stress. Now, although the precise way in which molecular hydrogen does its metabolic magic has yet to be conclusively proven, we believe that one of the ways is that it activates the important NRF2 pathway that signals your body and your DNA specifically to create additional important antioxidants. This, we believe, is really the ultimate way to create antioxidants, producing them only when you need it, as molecular hydrogen only tells your body to make these additional antioxidants when there's excessive oxidative stress. This way, your body doesn't create these powerful antioxidant molecules when they aren't needed, which can cause complications by suppressing these beneficial, biologically important free radicals, which are signaling molecules.
So Joe leaves you in no doubt what he feels about hydrogen. He says it's the most profoundly effective antioxidant that there is. It can decimate existing disease and bring back natural, vibrant health. Its healing powers really are unparalleled. Your blood sugar on hydrogen gets healthier. Your brain fog disappears. Your joints stop creaking. And you stop shouting at your partner because you're not as grouchy as you were before because you're tired all the time. And you don't forget your grandkids' names, folks. Hydrogen will help you with all that stuff. Now, McCullough has brought thousands of products to the market over the years, thousands of different products. When he was asked last year in a video to celebrate 40 years of his practice, out of the thousands of products that he has stocked and brought to market, when they asked him, what is the one product you're most proud of? What did he say? Hydrogen. He said, hydrogen has changed more lives, in my opinion, than anything else I've ever brought to market. Now, modern science has known about the healing effects of hydrogen for a long time. It's been known about in Japan. So why have we not heard about it? Why have all these countless studies with extraordinary results not been something that has been trumpeted? Well, it is a recognized medical treatment in Japan, which is never going to be over here. Why is that? Big Pharma, of course. Because Big Pharma, this is a threat to them. It's a huge threat to them. And it's been kept hidden from the general public over here for decades. They just like to keep spoon-feeding us our drugs through their media buddies, rather than let us know things that really can help us, like hydrogen. Now, I became aware of a conference happening in Slovakia here in Europe 3 or 4 years ago now. And I flew a camera crew over there to meet, because all these Japanese experts were flying in at their own expense to spread the gospel of hydrogen, if you like. And I flew a camera crew over there, and I'll run a couple of those little clips again at the very, very end tonight for those of you who are really interested. But what would those hydrogen experts have told you? And what were they telling people at that conference? Well, they were telling about hydrogen being the smallest, lightest element that can go anywhere in your body. That's part of its secret. It is so tiny, it can literally reach anywhere and neutralize the free radicals that are causing the inflammation in your body. Now, as you're about to discover, this hydrogen gas can actually bring your body back to its natural state of health. This is a hydrogen molecule. It's an H2 molecule. This is an H2O molecule, or a water molecule, for those of you who know, which most of you I'm sure do. This is a representation of a glass of water, rectangular or square glass of water in this case, but it's full of H2O. If I was to introduce hydrogen gas into that, because a lot of people get confused about this, it doesn't bond with the water. It's in there like salt or sugar would be. It's mixed in. It's in suspension, if you like. And it's neutral, so it doesn't affect the pH. It's totally colorless, tasteless, odorless. You don't know it's in there. But it's the perfect way to be, because it's these tiny nanobubbles, these therapeutic bubbles that are dissolved in there. Those are the ones that are so important that you get into your body. Now, it's measured in something called ppm, parts per million. So people will have a hydrogen device and say, well, how many parts per million does that provide to your body? And it's measured in ppm, and the therapeutic level, in other words, the level that all the studies have been shown to need to actually make a difference in your body, is 0.5 parts per million. That's what you have to have a minimum of, 0.5 parts per million. Again, just file that away in your brain. We'll come back to it in a moment or two. Now, there are over 1,000 studies to date showing the incredible healing effects of hydrogen. In those studies, hydrogen has been shown to increase energy, lessen fatigue, improve the immune system, reduce fat cells, increase brain function, reduce wrinkles, increase youthfulness. There's so much that this can do. But let's look at the top 7 results that I believe are relevant for you, because there's literally, as I say, hundreds of them. But these are the top 7 that I believe are most relevant. Number 1, hydrogen-rich water can improve fat and glucose metabolism, even in people with type 2 diabetes. So this can help with diabetes. If you're a diabetic, hydrogen water drank regularly every day can help you. Studies have shown it. Arthritis. Experts discovered that it can slow the progression of rheumatoid arthritis and relieve some of the symptoms, because at its core, arthritis is a condition that causes inflammation in the joints. Now note the phrase there, can slow the progression. So if you already have arthritis, this can slow down it getting worse. I often wonder, I've both my hips replaced, and many years ago, I played a lot of soccer when I was young. I think part of it's hereditary. But I do wonder if I'd known about hydrogen water then, could that have slowed the progression way down of that? Who knows? I'll never know, unfortunately. Number 3, heart attack victims. Many studies have proven that hydrogen-rich substances greatly improve the prospects of sufferers of heart failure and heart attacks. That's number 3. Number 4, fighting cancer. As I say, I've seen it in the clinics down there in Mexico. I've seen them use it. Everyone who drinks water down there, everyone's made drink water down there, and it's hydrogen water they may drink. After applying hydrogen-rich solutions to cancer cells in the lab, scientists concluded that they could shrink and suppress the growth of such cancer cells. Now, listen, I'm an honest guy, and I'm not here to blow smoke. So I'm going to say to you, am I telling you if you get a hydrogen water machine that it's going to cure your cancer? Of course I'm not. I'm not that stupid. I'm not that naive, and I'm not that deceitful either, to be honest. Could it help you? Absolutely. Do I know it will? I've no idea, because everyone's different. So all I can tell you is the studies have shown it can help in certain situations, and that's why they use it in those expensive clinics. Number 5, brain function. So back to the dementia, to the Alzheimer's. Drinking hydrogen-rich water can protect against the neurological damage of brain injury, both the type that occurs during surgery and stroke, and that which occurs over time due to oxidative stress. Let me emphasize that again. Over time, the slow degradation through dementia, through Alzheimer's, hydrogen water has been shown to help in studies. And we're going to send you a link to all those studies that we're talking about. Number 6 of 7, strong bones. Hydrogen helps support strong bones and muscles. It's one of the most frequently investigated benefits of this kind of water. And finally, number 7, autoimmune function. Because of its ability to decrease the free radicals that we've been talking about, H2 can help battle lupus, Hashimoto's, Graves, and many other autoimmune diseases. I have a friend who drinks hydrogen water every single day because they have Graves and they believe it helps them with the Graves. And the studies have shown that that is the case. Now, I'll give you a link at the end to over 1,000 studies. You can put in whatever you want to search for. It'll bring the studies up on that, and we'll email that to you as well. So that is coming your way. Now, let me just summarize what we've talked about so far. First of all, the quality of our water. It's a nightmare, okay? Our tap water is a nightmare. The drugs in there, the PFAs, the VOCs, the arsenic. You got to stop drinking your tap water. You have got to find a good filtration system of some kind. Maybe you have one, wonderful. If you don't have one, you need to get one. You need to filter your water. And thirdly, you need to think about hydrogen, because your body is not getting the hydrogen that it should be getting. So that is really a quick summary of where we've gone so far. Now, let me tell you one more thing. Hydrogen water is not alkaline water. They're not the same thing. There are alkaline water machines out there which also produce hydrogen and therefore do some good. But you want a machine that is first and foremost focused on the hydrogen, not on the alkalinity. If you go to YouTube, you will see doctors like this gentleman, Dr. Berg, who's I think over 1 million followers, doing video after video on the dangers of drinking alkaline water. You need to know what you're doing with alkaline water. It's hydrogen is doing the good, not the alkaline. So look into that. I did say at the start about the machine that I was loaned. It was an alkaline machine, the expensive one. Didn't do anything for me at all. So look into hydrogen, not alkalinity. Now, there's a gentleman called Tyler the Baron, and he is the president of the Molecular Hydrogen Foundation. And Tyler recently as in 2023, released some papers on why it's the hydrogen in our water doing the good for us and not the alkalinity. He is 100% convinced from all the studies he's done, from all the literature he's read, that alkalinity does not help your health, hydrogen does. So this is a little clip from an interview I did with Tyler about this. It's only 2 minutes long, but let me run this for you and let him explain why it's hydrogen, not alkaline water, that you're after. Run this for you now. This goes back with you way back to 2009, which amazed me as I was doing my research in this. And you read something in 2009 that really piqued your interest and has led to this amazing journey since. Is that basically what happened?
Yeah, I actually learned about alkaline ionized water back in 2009.
A really interesting thing happened a couple of months ago, Tyler, and this comes full circle to that first machine you had, because you were saying about, is it alkalinity, is it ORP, what is doing this? And you had a study come out a couple of months ago, which I know blew a lot of people away and has caused some controversy simply because it ruffled some fellas in the alkalinity community. But tell us what that study really brought forth.
Yeah, so this study it's electrolyzed reduced water, and there's 2 reviews that I wrote. One is that showing that the mechanism, the benefits, is exclusively due to hydrogen gas, and the other is some certain safety concerns about drinking this type of water. And this first review, I looked at all the literature. I've been working on this since 2013, actually. So like 10 years, and just was able to finally compile everything together, went through all the data, all the publications, all these publications people are talking about. Look, see, ionized water, alkaline works. Here it is, here it is. And I went through all of those and was able to conclusively demonstrate that all of these studies clearly show that when you remove the hydrogen gas from the water, the benefits are eliminated. And that's regardless of the pH, that's regardless of all the other claimed properties. It was just the hydrogen gas that mattered. And in fact, having a super high pH could be problematic. Number one, because maybe the pH is just too high. Number two, maybe because of electrodegradation or something going on, within the machine itself, and a number of other things that I discussed in the publication. There are some actually concerns about this, but in the end, it all comes down to, hey, what is the concentration of hydrogen? And that's all that matters. All the benefits are simply due to, molecular hydrogen.
So everything to do with alkaline water, hydrogen water comes down to hydrogen, 100%.
In terms of the therapeutic effects, yes. I mean, drinking water is actually good for you. And just to clarify too, drinking alkaline water that's natural from the ground, for example, that can be good for you, not because of the pH, but because it contains a lot of minerals like magnesium and calcium, a whole bunch of other trace minerals and things. And because it has those, it ends up sometimes being slightly alkaline, but it's not the pH. And so very different when you're talking about, alkaline water from a machine.
Sure. Fantastic. So that's Tyler LeBaron, a clip from the interview I did with him. And he's emphasizing, I just want to emphasize to you again, it's hydrogen you need in your water. It's not alkaline water that you need. Alkaline water does not improve your health unless, as a byproduct, it's producing this hydrogen. That's what the Kangen machines do. They produce hydrogen as a byproduct. But it tells you actually in the manual you have to clean the thing every week. So you're looking for a hydrogen machine, not an alkaline machine, just to clarify that for you.